All right, so we've seen how to use pandas in order to read CSV and Excel files. There's lots of very useful files that follow this format, and now we're going to see how we can actually read a table also from a web page. So lots of data nowadays is stored on the web or available on the web, especially during the coronavirus. There was a lot of early data that was actually posted on various websites. And so Pandas is actually very useful for reading this data without a lot of work. So for the next part, we are going to rely on 3 additional modules. So these are dependencies of Pandas. So Pandas uses these 3 modules in order to access web pages and then parse the web pages based upon the HTML. So go ahead and install these 3 modules using the following functions. And then an example, we're going to go back to the web page and there's an extra space in here if you copy and paste it. The web page that we saw before, where there is this table that lists the infection fatality ratio based upon your age, and there's a number of different scenarios. So this table actually changes and it's updated on a regular basis, or maybe not too much of a regular basis these days, but initially it was updated on a regular basis as more data came in. And so you might want to have a script that is able to grab this table and then run some sort of analysis based upon the new data. So how can you get this? So you don't really want to have to copy and paste this every single time you run the script. Ideally, you would have a way to actually grab this data within your script. And so Pandas is able to do that quite easily. And so if you run this function right here, so again, we use the Pandas module, and we are relying on this function read HTML. So you should notice a pattern. We've seen read CSV to read a CSV file, read Excel to read an Excel file, and now read HTML is able to read data tables from an HTML web page. And so what we're supplying it is just simply the name of the website where this data table is hosted. And what this function does is it actually goes through all of this entire web page, and then it grabs any sort of tables, table type objects that are on this web page. So for this web page, there's actually 2 different tables, table 1 and table 2, and so it's going to go ahead and grab both of those. And so if you copy and paste, again, you're going to have to, unfortunately, delete that extra space that comes across when you copy and paste. But now, lo and behold, it works. And we have access to 2 different tables. So what kind of object is returned? This is a list object. And so each table is a separate element of the list. So if we just simply use our slicing operator, we can access the first table, and we can verify that we have a data frame object. So again, this is the same type of object that the CSV in the Excel file is stored in, and this is kind of the bread and butter type object that Pandas uses. So if we wanted, we'll go over later how exactly to access all of this data, but you can use the name of the column, and you can grab this data right here. So we now have that data right there, and so we can simply parse this using our string skills, and we can grab the data if we continue to split it and parse it. So we have used Pandas in order to grab these 2 tables, and now we can use them to analyze within the script. So If you want to, you can also access individual tables. This requires a little bit of knowledge of HTML in order to do that. So, and this relies on the attributes of HTML. So if you want to just grab this table 1, if you use inspect, so I use Google Chrome, Firefox and Safari have similar functions. This allows you to actually look at the HTML of this entire document. So this entire document consists of HTML. So this is a little bit different. This is a lot different language than Python, but this is a structured language that relies on a large number of brackets. So these open and closing brackets. And this contains all of the data of the web page and allows you to interact with it with hyperlinks, etc. So if you use inspect, you can find the HTML that corresponds to the table, and what you want to look for is something called table. So you can see here that part of this HTML is a table tag, and so this table, so you have this bracket that opens the table and then closes the table. So this is where all that data is stored, and very often the table that you're looking for will have some sort of ID that's associated with it. And so if you use this ID feature right here, ID equals table 1, you can actually grab the table that you want. And you can actually use any of these attributes. So within this, there's also a class attribute. And you can use that in order to filter out exactly the data that you want. And so the second command shows you how to do that. So now, and again, there's this extra space that we have to delete. But so you see we've added this extra argument called attributes, ATTRS, and we supply it a dictionary. The key is the name of the attribute that we want to use, ID. So we want to filter on ID, and we're looking for table 1 as the table that we want to pull down. So ID is nice because every single element, only one element within the HTML is allowed to have that ID. IDs have to be unique. And so now we see we only pull down a single one of the tables. This is still a list object, so you have to use the slicing operator to access it. If we go to the second table on this web page, and we inspect that, this table actually doesn't even have an ID, so we'd have to use some other way and some other feature in order to grab this one. But luckily our table that we're interested in has an ID, so it's very easy to grab it using that feature.